Finally, I won't have to see your face anymore. Freeloader, get out! Haha.
You should be grateful that we tolerated your freeloading, parasitic lifestyle until now.
I see. I understand. I'll leave then. Thank you for everything until now. I quickly packed my belongings and left the house where I had been living with my in-laws. I noticed my mother-in-law looking at me with the happiest face as I was leaving. I left looking all sorrowful, but only I knew about what awaited this house next. My name is Emily. I'm a 32-year-old who works from home. It has been 5 years since I married John. We lived happily as a couple, but around our 4th year of marriage, things started to change. My previously healthy father-in-law suddenly fell ill, and we had to start caring for him. Therefore, we moved in with my in-laws. We thought we wouldn't have to live with them for quite some time, but John was an only child. With no siblings to rely on, we inevitably ended up taking care of my father-in-law. I even considered quitting my job for caregiving. However, perhaps because my hard work was recognized, I was allowed to work from home and continue working. Life in my in-laws' house started off hectically, but problems soon arose. Yes, it was the harassment from my mother-in-law. The common mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problems that you often hear about also fell on me. Emily, how long are you going to slack off and leave the housework alone? Get to tidying and preparing the meal already. Mother-in-law, I'm not goofing around, you know. What are you talking about? You're always clicking away at your computer. Surfing the web, you call it? You must be goofing off. Surfing the web? Haha. The idea that being on a computer equals killing time is so old-minded. I was specially granted permission to work from home. I didn't want to waste the skills I had worked hard to acquire, so I worked hard at my job in between household chores and caregiving to maintain my previous income. And it was gratifying when, after about 3 months of desperate effort, I was able to restore my income. The reason why I had to work so hard was because, frankly, it was difficult to get by on John's income alone. Finally, we're going to have some leeway in our lives. I want to save some money. That's what I thought, but for some reason life became harder. It felt like our savings was only decreasing. I wondered why, and when I checked our expenses, it turned out that John was splurging a lot. And I also found out that my mother-in-law was also splurging quite a bit. John has always been a show-off, and he often treats his colleagues to lunch. But recently, he's been using our credit card to treat many colleagues at parties. Of course, if you spend more than you put in the house, it's bound to decrease. My mother-in-law, for her part, takes up multiple hobbies at the invitation of her friends, and she unhesitatingly uses money for class fees and expenses for socializing. With both my husband and my mother-in-law throwing housework and caregiving duties at me, and splurging as they please, I couldn't take it anymore. As I was covering all the living expenses with my income and couldn't even think about saving, I became anxious and decided to talk to my husband and mother-in-law. Both John and mother-in-law, you seem to be spending a lot of money wastefully lately. We're going to run out of savings at this rate, so could you please hold back a bit on spending? Upon saying this, my husband John and my mother-in-law strongly rebutted.
You think I wouldn't care if my colleagues see me as a stingy man? You want me to get looked down upon?
It's okay if you're not always the one to treat them. Besides, even if you don't show off sometimes, they won't think you're stingy.
I'm always considerate towards the people at my office to make sure we all work well together. You wouldn't understand anything about work.
It's fine to treat your colleagues to lunch, But how does taking your colleagues to a girls' bar on your dime relate to work? Aren't you just doing it because you enjoy it?
How do you know that?
You always come home drunk and happily report it yourself, don't you? That's just how much more fun he has compared to talking with you.
Mom, you get it too, right? That's what I meant, haha.
I too attend my classes to spend my dwindling time having fun with my friends. Are you telling me to stay cooped up at home? You're such a terrible wife.
There's no reason for you, who don't even earn a cent and only do housework, to tell me what to do.
Really, what is she thinking? Acting all high and mighty when she's just a housewife. I do work, and you guys know it. I'm earning and contributing to the household, you know. I'm also taking care of your father, not just doing the housework.
Don't lie. My mom takes care of my dad, and since you're not even going to the office, you're not earning much, are you? Who the hell do you think you are? Getting all cocky just because you work part-time.
Stunned, I was at a loss for words. It seems like this mother-son duo really didn't understand that I was truly working and taking care of the house and father-in-law, all while earning. Moreover, my mother-in-law seemed to have told John that she was the one taking care of my father-in-law, making me look like a lazy housewife. I considered leaving several times, but the reason I refrained was, of course, my father-in-law. My father-in-law has always been very kind to me since I got married to John, and he would always say, "Emily, I'm really sorry that a great daughter-in-law like you has to put up with so much." Father-in-law, I don't mind taking care of you. What are you talking about?
I do feel guilty about needing care, but I feel even worse about how my wife and son are treating you. You're being taken advantage of, aren't you?
Well, yes.
With just John's income, we wouldn't be able to maintain a living. I know that it's all thanks to your hard work that we're getting by.
Father-in-law, you knew? It turned out that my father-in-law had been aware of the household situation for a long time. And every time he needed care, he would thank me and speak to me with a kind voice. I loved my father-in-law, and I didn't find taking care of him a burden at all. What if I left this house? I was anxious about who would take care of my beloved father-in-law, so I decided to take care of him diligently until he passed away. And about a year later, my father-in-law passed away. During the funeral of my father-in-law, whom I loved so much, I cried the whole time. Seeing me, my mother-in-law coldly said, "Emily, why are you crying so much?" Without shedding a tear, my mother-in-law showed no signs of grieving for my father-in-law. So of course I replied, "What? My father-in-law has passed away. Of course I would be sad. I've been taking care of him all this time." Upon hearing my response, my mother-in-law exploded in anger. "Gosh, as if I didn't take care of my husband at all!" In reality, my mother-in-law heartily took care of my father-in-law. She took advantage of me, doing neither housework nor caregiving, and claimed she was too busy with her hobbies. Despite that, she always found the time to go out. She played the part of the poor mother-in-law being bullied by her daughter-in-law, even pretending to cry in front of relatives. From the outside, it seems like I was a terrible daughter-in-law, to the point where people said, "Please stop being so harsh on your mother-in-law." Some even sided with her and blamed me. I was merely grieving the death of my father-in-law, yet even strangers blamed me. It pissed me off. I chose to stay away from our relatives. Then John, having noticed me, approached me to complain.
"So, you embarrassed my mom in front of our relatives, huh?"
"What are you talking about? I don't understand. I was just crying and grieving your dad's death. Then your mom came up to me making snide comments. That's all."
"I heard you were talking as if she did nothing for my dad."
I didn't say such a thing. I was just talking about how sad I was that your dad, who I had been taking care of, passed away. Maybe it sounded like I was blaming your mom because she didn't do anything in reality.
Are you looking down on my mom?
No, I'm just telling the truth. And if you're so upset, you should have helped me out. Don't you think you could have taken better care of your own dad?
Why are you blaming me too? I have nothing to do with this.
Nothing to do with this. You're his own son. Didn't you feel any responsibility to take care of him?
I had work. It was your job as a housewife to take care of him.
That makes no sense. I have work too, so that's unfair. Our argument heated up and was broken up by panicked relatives. Although the argument ended there, my husband and I didn't speak for the rest of the day. Later, after all the funeral-related matters were settled, a lawyer spoke about the inheritance.
I'd like to discuss the will concerning the inheritance following your father-in-law's death. It is written that the rights to the family home and the land will go to his son John, while the remaining money will be split evenly between his wife and his daughter-in-law, Emily.
What? Why would Emily get a part of the inheritance? I'm his wife, right? If John gets the land and the house, shouldn't the rest of the assets all be mine?
Your husband expressed his gratitude to Emily, who dedicated herself to his care. It is his wish to leave her part of the inheritance as a token of that gratitude. This is a decision made by your husband, and it cannot be overturned.
So that's it. Oh, I see. Emily was only taking care of him because she was after the inheritance. Why would you say that? It must be. Why else would she dedicate herself to caregiving? I've had a good relationship with my father-in-law ever since we got married. I took care of him to repay his kindness. If you think it's impossible, why did you push the caregiving onto me, mother-in-law? How can you belittle me like that? Don't talk crap. I get it now, so keep your mouth shut. With our lawyer present, my mother-in-law couldn't say anything inappropriate, so she continued with a frustrated expression. So he decided that. Well, it's a token of appreciation for caregiving. I guess there's no other way. Then the lawyer continued with the discussion.
May I continue? Your father-in-law left a note saying that Emily no longer needs to take care of him.
At that moment, my mother-in-law's face, which had been bitter up to then, suddenly lit up with a smile. That's it! That's what it means! I understand now!
Huh? What do you mean?
Confused by his mother's excitement, my husband seemed completely at a loss. It means that Emily is no longer needed in this house, since she won't have to take care of my husband. The reason for dividing the inheritance was just severance pay, not gratitude. My mother-in-law twisted my father-in-law's will according to her own speculations. My mother-in-law misunderstood my father-in-law's will as my father-in-law and I had intended it to be misunderstood. Actually, there was a discussion between my father-in-law and me while he was still alive. My father-in-law wished to set me free from this house after his death. He planned to use his will to fool my husband and mother-in-law, allowing me to leave the house without any trouble. And just as my father-in-law intended, my mother-in-law, who was completely fooled, is trying to kick me out. While making sure they did not catch on to my true feelings, I pretended to be shocked by the will, saying, "Oh, Father, why would you do such a thing? See, even my husband didn't see you as his precious daughter-in-law. John, you don't need Emily anymore, do you? Just divorce her already." John, you wouldn't say something like divorce, right? I looked at John with tearful eyes. After a long pause,
Indeed, it seems better to divorce,
he finally said.
Me, I've received the family property and Mom has got the money. I don't need to worry about care in the future, and I won't have any trouble with Emily.
What? I see.
That's how it is. Sorry, but could you leave me?
Understood. I guess there's no place for me anymore here, I meekly said as I took a piece of paper from my drawer and handed it to my husband. When we had a fight before, there was one time I went to pick this up. That, of course, was the divorce papers. My husband immediately signed the divorce papers. Finally, I don't have to see your face. A freeloader who doesn't work. Get out, haha.
Appreciate that I put up with a parasite like you all this time.
I see. Okay, I'll leave. Thank you for everything so far. Speaking of which, since the lawyer is here, I want to discuss. It's okay if there's no property division, right? I've received enough from my father-in-law's inheritance.
That's right. How considerate of you, Emily. I've been able to live on my earnings. It would be brazen of you to want more.
Well, you're right. All right, the discussion is over. Please leave this house as soon as possible. I quickly packed my belongings and left the house where I had been living. My mother-in-law was watching me leave with a joyous face beyond words, not knowing what awaited in this house. After leaving the in-laws' house, I immediately submitted the divorce papers to the city hall. Arriving at the apartment I had rented in advance, I shouted in the wide room alone. Yes, I've finally been set free! I'm free! I just couldn't help but yell. I was so happy to be free from the painful married life. I can't thank my father-in-law enough, who planned the escape from that house. Since then, I've been enjoying a too comfortable life alone. I adapted to working remotely at my in-laws' place. But now that I left, I now have much more time to dedicate to my work. My income has increased due to that, and I'm able to live a luxurious life without being disturbed by anyone. One day, I got a call from my ex-husband, John. It's been a while. What brings you to call me?
Emily, please help us. We're having a tough time making ends meet.
Is this some kind of joke? Weren't you the ones who told me to get lost?
Even though we're getting the same salary as before, for some reason we don't have enough money. We can't live like this.
Oh dear, haha, that does sound tough. I decided to drop the final bombshell. Well, that's because my salary isn't going into the household anymore.
What do you mean?
Don't you understand? You couldn't afford your lifestyle just with your salary. All those splurging, and you never noticed?
I couldn't afford our lifestyle with my salary alone?
Of course not. You've always been squandering all your salary on yourself. The only reason we could get by was because of the money I was bringing in. You and your mother at your ages, your habit of spending is just ridiculous.
What? So how much were you making, Emily?
Let me see. Back then, it was around $4,800 a month, I guess.
You were making that much?
Yes, I was. Bet you didn't know that, did you? By the way, now that I don't have any hindrances, I'm making even more. Haha. Even over the phone, I could tell my ex-husband was shaken.
Emily, how about we live together again?
Huh?
It was a mistake to kick you out. It's not too late to start over, right?
What are you talking about? It's obvious you're just after my earnings.
No, that's not it. I've realized that I still love you, Emily.
Don't talk nonsense. I have no desire to return to your place. By the way, what happened to the inheritance your mother received? You should have plenty left from that, right?
Well, it's nearly run out.
There's no way. She got about $100,000, right? There's no way you could have spent all of it in such a short period of time.
We enjoyed shopping and overseas trips. Also, we lost nearly half of it in casinos.
Both of you are just hopeless. I'm speechless. I'm a stranger now. I can't do anything about it, and I don't want to.
But don't say such cold things. Help us.
I don't care. I'm ending this call. Don't call me again. With that, I hung up the phone and immediately canceled the contract of his phone. I have no idea what happened to my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law after losing all means of communication. However, when I passed by their house nearly a year after that phone call, the place had been demolished. They must have had to let go of the house due to financial troubles. Well, it's none of my business anyway. As for me, I decided to spend my newfound free time on a new hobby and started attending a wine class that I had been interested in. There, I met a man 2 years older than me who was actively pursuing me. After a year and a half of dating, we got married. He's a humble and warm-hearted man who is a rising star at a well-known company and earns a high salary. He respects my work, and we have a happy married life where we respect each other. Lately, I've been thinking that perhaps this reward was a gift from my father-in-law.